What's going on, guys? Thank you for joining me for another stream on the Musket Fire YouTube channel. I am Sarah Marshall, the editor for musketfire.com, where you can get all of your latest Patriots news, analysis, opinion, rumors, whatever you are looking for regarding the Patriots. Make sure you check out musketfire.com. And we had a bunch of stuff go up today, so make sure you check that out. It's at that point in the off season where it's a little bit slow, so news is a little slow, but hopefully you guys are staying up to date and getting your daily Patriots fix with Musket Fire. I want to make sure to say hi to Chris. He is a loyal watcher, so thank you, Chris, for staying up a little bit late to hang out today. But we're going to talk about a few things today. Definitely going to talk about OTAs. I want to talk about that first, actually, because that is the most relevant news around the Patriots right now. So let's just get into that right away. So Patriots OTAs, they're underway, or they were last week. And the big thing from over the weekend, I would say, is who's standing out already in their performances on the field. So granted, I know that OTAs are not, there's no pads, there's no real defense, it's not a game, it's a practice. I get it. And a lot of people don't get too excited about OTAs because of that. But I do think that it's important to pay attention to who's doing well and who's not, especially with the younger players and the draft picks, because it does say a little something if someone's doing well and someone's not. So I think that there were some interesting players that stood out the most. And I would say the most interesting, I don't think anybody would have guessed, was definitely Tyquan Thornton. So he is a guy that needs to have a good summer. We know that, he's entering his third season, and if anybody needs to have a breakthrough, summer to the 2024 season, it is Tyquan Thornton, because from the beginning, he was a criticized draft pick anyway, because Belichick traded up for him. They feel like they took him 2 or 3 rounds too early, and he is yet to live up to the second round pick status that comes with Jeez Louise. That comes with being a second round draft pick. We know that he's been injured to start both seasons in 2022 and in 2023, which is not a great start to your career, or even the second year of your career, which is why he put on weight. That was something that everyone had been talking about, was probably the biggest issue with him as a player, is that he was too tall and thin, and that might have been why he broke his collarbone as a rookie. So we've seen that he's been in the weight room. It's been a part of a lot of the videos that he has posted online, more so with all the time he's been spending with Demario Douglas and Kendrick Bourne and a few of the other receivers. So they've been a part of KB's YouTube channel and the vlogs that he's been posting. So that is really great to see that Tyquan is very involved. He's training hard. It's not easy to put on weight in a way that still allows you to be athletic and fast and still play to the degree that you need to play. So he has been having a standout OTAs so far. He has made a few impressive catches from both Drake Maye and Jacoby Brissett. So that was a highlight for sure. All of the reporters that were in attendance for the allowed practices were talking about him. So that's a good sign. He's not really been one of those players that has been talked about over the last couple years. I know there's some that are repeat offenders that are looking great in the summer, but then when it comes to actually being on the field during the game, it's not so much the same. So I think that this is a good sign for Tyquan. Hopefully he can continue it. He's definitely on the roster bubble. So he has a lot of work to do to solidify himself on that 53-man roster for the 2024 season. But if he's able to keep this going and to stand out, then he might be on the right track. So Sticking to receivers, we have Javon Baker, and I don't think there's really anyone that is surprised about this because I think for the most part, people were really excited over the Patriots drafting him. Oh my goodness, I'm playing with the colors here. Um, so people were really excited from the second that he was drafted, and he's already living up to the hype. So if you've watched his highlights at UCF, then you know that he is an absolute beast on the field, and kind of crazy that he fell to the 4th round because he was getting a lot of hype over the last like couple weeks leading up to the draft. So even when I've done a ton of mock drafts, and I was picking Javon Baker as much as I possibly could, and it started to get a little bit more difficult because he was rising in the ranks. So the Patriots are definitely lucky that they got him. He also had a few impressive catches, including what stood out the most, which was a toe tapper catch over Marco Wilson, which was good for about 30 yards. So he's definitely been putting in the work. Taylor Kyles of CLNS Media, he did an interview with one of his coaches, and he's went over all of the crazy work that Javon puts in. So I think he's having a similar start to the offseason, the way that Demario Douglas did last year. That was, he was the guy that everybody was talking about throughout the summer and all throughout training camp as well. So we'll have to see if Baker can keep that up. But we know that Pop earned a roster spot fairly early on, which is not something that was typical of a Bill Belichick run team. So we'll have to see if Baker can continue that. But from what we've seen so far, he's definitely living up to everything that people were saying about him, which is really exciting because the Patriots offense needs as much help as they possibly can, especially if Drake Maye is going to be the quarterback at some point this season. So speaking of Drake Maye, you can't really talk about what's going on with the Patriots without talking about Drake Maye. And he is already, living up to the fact that he was the 3rd pick in this year's draft. Some people believe that he was maybe a top 2, if not the best quarterback outside of Caleb Williams, who everyone knew was going to be the first overall pick, 6 months before the draft. So I think for me, other than what we've seen already, we saw the video of him throwing the no-look pass, very much like Patrick Mahomes. That went viral. So that's exciting. But I think the thing that has stood out the most to me was his natural ability to lead. That video that I can't remember if it was the Patriots who posted it or who it was, but he was mic'd up, and it was like very early in OTAs, maybe the first 2 practices that they actually had. And he's communicating so naturally with Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, just asking them okay, what did you see? What did you do? How did you respond? And he's telling them, okay, this is what I was going to do. So if I do this, then make sure you do this. Just talking to them and just going over the play and just telling them okay, if I do this, anticipate this, or maybe run this way. It's very encouraging to see that, because one of the biggest critiques I think that Mac Jones faced was not taking over that leadership role with the team, and people felt like that might have been one reason why the offense never really gelled necessarily during his time in New England. And the fact that Drake Maye is already in here, he's younger than every other quarterback, he's only 21 years old, and he's already taking on this leadership, at this I don't know how to describe it. Just he's already taking on this role as the guy of the offense. I think that says a lot about the type of player he is, the type of guy that he is. And I think that it's a really positive sign for the future of the offense. Even if he doesn't play this season, maybe he sits a year and doesn't play until next year. I think this is definitely a move in the right direction. And I feel that this is going to be something that will get him a lot more praise if this continues, because so many people were not excited about what Mac Jones did over those 3 years. So very exciting to see that from such a young player and so early in his career. And then we two players that weren't necessarily standing out on the field during OTAs, but they have been behind the scenes with Gerard Mayo. But we have to remember that the media is not allowed to attend every single OTAs. So Gerard Mayo is seeing these guys on the field every single day. So just because the media isn't saying, okay, these guys are doing great, but Mayo is, that's going to be the reason, basically. So the first one that he has been really excited about was Keon White, who was drafted last year. And he said, when he was asked about who he believes has been the most impressive, he said, I would say Keon is kind of taking that step forward as far as being a leader, not as much vocally, but you see him actually leading the groups and working well with others. He's always been a strong guy, but I would say he's even stronger now. He is here each and every day, and in the meeting rooms, he is actually kind of talking and leading those conversations, which I think is important. And we always talk about that year 2 jump. That's the biggest jump you're going to have. So it's going to be interesting to see if Keon can show that on the field, because we didn't get to really see a whole lot from him last year. And he had an opportunity to kind of take over the defense, not necessarily on his own, but to kind of just break through when Judon went out. And he could have had that moment, you know, kind of like what Christian Barmore did, or like Jelani Tavai kind of came alive once Judon went out. I think that a lot of people were expecting Keon to do the same thing, and we just didn't see that from him. So if we're already seeing a lot of progress from him, or Mayo is seeing a lot of progress from him already, I think that's huge. And he's right. A second-year jump is a big deal, especially for a player that is not a quarterback. A lot of the time with a quarterback, we know it's a third-year jump. So it'll be interesting to see if he can make that jump once it's actual game time, because Judon is going to need help. You know, like, he is basically the only consistent pass rusher on the team, and we saw how that fell when he was not on the field. So hopefully we can get Keon to step up and do that, because that would be awesome, especially heading, you know, he's such a young player and he has 3 more years on his contract. It would be great if he could show why he was drafted in the first place early on. So we shall see about that. And lastly, Mayo also wanted to talk about Brendan Schooler. He said, we know he plays hard each and every down, and he's out there each and every time. I think that's the most important thing. He's a great athlete in the weight room, always pushing guys and really just helping with the younger guys. So something that I think some people are maybe overlooking is how crucial it is that Brendan Schooler got to learn under Matthew Slater for the first 2 years of his career. That is so invaluable, especially for the guy who is going to be the go-to guy on special teams now that Slater has retired. He learned from the best. There's no one else that you could dream of having be your mentor. So that is exciting for Schooler, because he's already played really well as it is. Over the last 2 years, we've already seen him make some really incredible plays that gave the offense more opportunities. And I think that now that he's going to be the sole guy to do that, it's going to be a lot of pressure on his shoulders, especially now, you know, we have Slater on the sideline, which that's going to be a benefit too. He's going to be a coach, so he's not completely alone in this. Schooler isn't. And he's already shown that he can be an asset on the team. So I do think that the special teams is going to be in good hands. I think when you initially think about Slater retiring, it's a huge loss, but I think Brendan Schooler having the ability to like pick his brain and learn from him and, you know, be the guy next to him in the locker room, like that's so incredible for him and for the team. And then the fact that Slater is going to continue to be around is huge, because losing him on the field is, you know, going to inevitably be a loss, but losing him as a voice in the locker room would also be significant. So I think the fact that he's sticking around and he'll still be able to be there to mentor guys like Slater is important. So I think that we're going to see big things from Brendan Schooler, and I'm really excited. I think he's kind of one of the under the radar players that people don't really talk about enough. And I think he fits the attitude that you want in that kind of player. And I think that's exciting because I think the Patriots are kind of like moving in that direction where we're getting more, I don't even know how, like, grizzled, like, I don't even know how to describe it, but I hope you guys know what I mean. I feel like they're just like fighters or dogs. Like, you know, they want to get out there and play, and they want to play hard. And I feel like that is the epitome of what Brendan Schooler is. And it's pretty fun to see that on special teams. Chris says, you cannot underestimate learning from top guys like Slater. Absolutely not. I don't think there's anybody that you could learn from that would be better if you're going to play on special teams. You know, we know that Slater has been a big locker room guy and just like a great leader, a great guy to speak to, a great motivator. So you could definitely learn from him, even if you don't play on special teams. But I think that the fact that he was able to guide Schooler is going to be so great with the Patriots trying to get their special teams back to where they were historically, being one of the best, if not the best units in the entire league. So I think that is going to be, I think it's going to pay off. I really do. So before moving on completely from OTAs, I kind of want to just talk about, you know, we talked about Brendan Schooler. I want to talk about players that I think that the Patriots should build their roster around. One of them is Brendan Schooler. I've already talked about him, so I'm not going to talk about it again. And people thought it was really odd that I included Schooler in this list because I did write about this. It's on musketfire.com. And I got mixed reactions from having Schooler on the list, but I think we know how much the Patriots prioritize making a good special teams unit, that they know that the third unit might be one of the most important parts of the entire game of football. So I think having a good leader, a great performer, someone who is consistently productive like Brendan Schooler on special teams is huge. And I don't think that just because, you know, the offense needs help and you want to make sure your defense is good, that you should kind of just negate taking care of special teams, because I think as Patriots fans and as other fans of teams know this too, but in recent years, we've seen how bad performances from special teams loses you games like that. We dealt with that a lot last year. We know from Chad Ryland specifically, and just some of the mess ups with the bad tackling and whatnot by special teams last year. So it's crucial that you prioritize it and you make sure that you have solid players on there. And I think building the rest of the special teams around Brendan Schooler is a good idea. I don't see why that's so crazy, but to some people, I guess it is. So for the other 5 players, we'll start with defense, and I say Christian Gonzalez. I feel like that's an easy one, right? Like, of course, right? So we know that Elliott Wolf is known for liking to draft and develop players. They want to build their team on the backs of the players that they draft. It was a problem when he was in Green Bay because they wanted him to go after certain free agents and whatnot, and that's just not what he did. He likes to take them in the draft and build them up that way, and Christian Gonzalez is like the perfect guy to do that with. We only got to see him through 3.5 or so games last year, unfortunately, before he suffered that labrum tear in his shoulder. But even through 3.5 games, he was in the top 3 names to be Defensive Rookie of the Year, and I feel like that says something. I mean, he came out so hot, living up to being a first rounder, making you question even more how he fell to the Patriots at number 17, which was after they traded back. Like, there's no reason that all of those teams looked past him. When I was doing mock drafts, and I know mock drafts aren't always the most accurate, but Gonzalez was consistently the first cornerback taken. And I think out of all of the dozens and dozens of mock drafts that I did, I got him once at number 4. Was it 14? I think it was 14 was the Patriots' original pick. So I still don't get it. And I think that people are going to be kicking themselves that they decided to pass on him and either take somebody else or just didn't take a cornerback at all. We saw last year he had 1 interception, 3 passes defended, a sack, which was insane because what? A cornerback getting a sack? Some cornerbacks don't get a sack ever in their entire career. He got it through 3.5 games. He had 17 combined tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, and a quarterback hit. So we saw that he was looking like he had all of the makings of being a shutdown corner, which is incredible for what the Patriots need from their secondary. We know that he will be leading it with Jonathan Jones, and there's still room for potentially some more. We know that Marcus Jones will be returning, and he really wants to focus on defense, which I'm thinking they might actually do that now that Maye is in control. He might actually want to keep him in defense, instead of the offense. We'll see. But Gonzalez, yeah, if he continues to show what he showed us last year, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't, then you have to build the rest of the secondary around him. There's no reason not to, especially the cornerback. So they are very lucky to have that guy under contract for at least 3 more years. Moving to the offense, we'll move to Demario Douglas. He is the guy that I don't think anyone really had high expectations for. He was a 6th round pick. For the most part, when we were talking about the excitement coming from the draft, we had Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte, who were drafted in the 6th round. And more people were talking about Kayshon Boutte and how they were excited about that, simply because he had previously been a projected 1st round draft pick before the final season of his college career at LSU. And that's what made him fall all the way to the 6th because of all these other issues and whatnot. And so, people were talking about him and they weren't really talking about Douglas. And I think partially that's because he went to a smaller school. And, when you're a 6th round draft pick, there aren't really a lot of, there's not a really lot of excitement around you, because at that point people just assume you're being added to the team, like nothing's really going to come of you. So I think that was one issue that Douglas dealt with. But we saw early on, as I said earlier, he showed up and showed out on that field during practices at OTAs and during training camp. And he wasn't around too much at preseason because he was dealing with some injury. I can't remember off the top of my head what exactly it was, but he locked his roster spot up so early. It was a huge talking point because, as I said, that's not a common thing for a rookie, especially with Bill Belichick. So that was huge. And he was the most productive receiver for the Patriots last year, despite the fact that the offense was an absolute hot mess. He had 49 receptions for 561 yards, averaging 11.4 yards per catch, which is phenomenal. And he unfortunately is suffering the fate similar to that of Jacoby Myers, where he is yet to get a touchdown. So he was definitely productive on the field, just not in the end zone, which, to be fair, the Patriots didn't get a lot of touchdowns last year, so you can't really hold that against him a whole lot. But he's going to be great. The Patriots then kept Kendrick Bourne, who was also on pace last year to have the best season of his career before he suffered the ACL tear, which was so horrible. It was such bad timing, and it was just really, it bummed me out, man. So they're going to be a great pair, and I think we're going to see more from Douglas this year. I think they're going to utilize him a lot more. I think him and KB are going to have great seasons, and then of course, we'll have the rookies, but they are rookies, so we'll have to see how they fare on the field. But I think Douglas is a great foundational piece to build around, and they've already been doing a great job so far from what we've seen by taking Baker and Polk. So I think that the Patriots receiving core is in good hands right now. They definitely probably need that real wide receiver one that we've all been talking about. And we know that Justin Jefferson is off the table, even if it was like this much of a chance that he could be a Patriot. We know that he is now off the table. So that leaves Brandon Ayuk, who is still apparently working out a deal potentially with the Niners, or T. Higgins, who is still dealing with whatever the Bengals are trying to do, because it seems like they're not really interested in keeping him, but it is what it is. So we'll have to pay attention to that. Otherwise, it looks like they're just going to have to build through the draft, because it's not looking like there are many receivers who will be on the trade block next offseason. Chris says, forget getting a wide receiver one. Yeah, I think that it's kind of like a complex idea. I know that that sounds kind of ridiculous to say, but and you can't necessarily compare an offense under Tom Brady to an offense now because it's Tom Brady. You know, like Brady can make most offenses look good, but a lot of the time they didn't have a clear wide receiver one, you know, like even if in our minds, or even if the stats told you it was Julian Edelman or something, you know, it's like Edelman wouldn't have been a wide receiver one on like any other team, really. So the Patriots have proven that you don't need to have that guy, but obviously it just makes your job so much easier, because look at the year that he had Randy Moss, you know. So I think we're just gonna have to see how this group plays this year, because then it might not be a factor. We might end up seeing maybe Jalen Polk is that wide receiver one, maybe Javon Baker is that wide receiver one, maybe it is Demario Douglas, even if he is a smaller receiver. I'm not sure, but we shall see. Chris also says, I want to see this wide receiver group have more production and separation, and if at all possible, some touchdowns. Yeah, I think it's going to be better. Like I said, Kendrick Bourne was on pace to have the best season of his career last year, and we know that Demario probably could have done more as well had there been some more consistency from the quarterbacks and the offensive line. So I think if they're in a better position this year, which it seems like they are with Jacoby Brissett or Drake Maye and the offensive line additions, I think that they could be better. And it's definitely going to be something worth watching during the summer, during training camp and preseason. It's actually going to be something you want to watch unfold instead of just reading about. Then we move back to the defense with Christian Barmore. Duh, right? Like, do I really need to say Christian Barmore? I think we can all agree on that. He took a little bit. He's always been a solid player for the Patriots since he was drafted 3 years ago, but he really came alive last season, and for the most part it happened when Judon went down. So he played in all 17 games. He racked up 1 forced fumble, 5 passes defended, 8.5 sacks, 64 combined tackles, 13 tackles for a loss, and 16 quarterback hits, which were all career highs, like double or triple what he did the year before or the year before. So Barmore definitely earned that contract extension that he got this offseason. And if he can continue on that path that he left last year, then I see no reason why he might not end up being the guy that is kind of like the Judon's number 2. He is going to be a solid piece on the defensive line for a long time, and he's young. So it's great that they signed him for another few years, and I think that he should remain a foundational piece. But yeah, so I think the defense is in good hands with a guy like Barmore leading the way. And then we'll have to the offense again, Ramondre Stevenson. So he is playing on a contract year, and it's going to be interesting to see if they give him a new contract, because historically running backs are not a position that is rewarded with new contracts. A lot of teams don't like to extend their running backs. They don't like to pay their running backs. It's a controversial topic. I think it's kind of ridiculous, because I think a lot of offenses run through literally and figuratively run through the running back, and Ramondre Stevenson has been by far the most productive piece on offense that they've had over the last 3 years. So the idea of just letting him walk and go somewhere else seems insane to me, especially where, you know, he got injured last year and was splitting reps and stuff like that with Ezekiel Elliott last year. But in 2022, when he was by far the RB1 in the backfield, he had 210 carries, 1,040 yards, and 5 touchdowns, plus 69 receptions for 421 yards and a touchdown. Last year, he still did fine. He had 156 carries for 619 yards, 4 touchdowns, plus 38 receptions for 238 yards. But we know that he got injured and missed the last a month or so of games. And he's already said that he's anticipating and he wants to be the number one guy on the offense this year. And he wants to like be the leader and carry more responsibility. So I think that they should honor that and do that. I think that he was gifted a great partner in Antonio Gibson, and I'm really excited to see how they will utilize him. I think that we saw glimpses of greatness that Gibson can bring, especially early in his career. And they might be able to maybe utilize him a bit more as a receiver and keep Ramondre maybe more on the ground. I'm not sure, but I do think that he deserves an extension, and I don't think that he's going to necessarily garner as much money as, you know, obviously like Josh Jacobs or Nick Chubb or something like that, but I do think that he's proven enough that he deserves to stay in New England. And lastly, Michael Onwenu. Like, this guy, you know, he just got a contract extension as well. Thank goodness, for 3 more years. Last year, he allowed only 3 sacks on 850 offensive snaps and 2 hits. He's a solid pass rusher, solid run blocker. He's going to be the starting right tackle for the Patriots for at least the next 3 years. He's the most consistent piece on offense, and I think if he keeps playing the way that he's already been showing, there's absolutely no reason in 3 years that they don't pay him and keep him, because he would easily be the best offensive lineman on someone else's team, and that would be unfortunate for it to not be the Patriots. I think with Elliott Wolf around, it might be easier or more possible that Onwenu stays because, as I've said a few times, he likes to build and develop through the draft, and that is what they did with Onwenu. So that would be a great move in my opinion. And he might have the best side of the offensive line this year, because we know that the left tackle is a little bit questionable and we aren't sure with what they're going to do there. So Onwenu is definitely going to be exciting and a huge part of how successful the offensive line will be this year, especially protecting whoever the quarterback is, which is going to be even more crucial if it's Drake Maye, because you definitely do not want Drake Maye to be starting off, you know, with a bunch of hits or something. We don't want an Andrew Luck situation. Like, absolutely not. Then we move on to a piece that I put out today, which was the Patriots are named a good fit for Michael Thomas before the 2024 season. So getting back to the conversation surrounding the Patriots receiving core, missing a wide receiver 1, Michael Thomas is still out there. And he might not be the wide receiver 1 that people want, but he used to be like the most coveted, like you wanted him on your team. You know, when he was peak Michael Thomas on the Saints, you wanted him on your team. So I think it was Bleacher Report that put this out there. And this is what they had to say for why Michael Thomas should go to the Patriots. They said former Saints star Michael Thomas hasn't played a full season or been a Pro Bowler since 2019. The injuries have plagued him ever since, and make it hard to believe that the 31-year-old will ever be an elite wideout again. However, Thomas is still 6'3", 220 pounds, a good target and one of the top route runners in the NFL. He showed flashes of his previous form in 2023, finishing with 39 catches for 448 yards and a touchdown in 10 games. Thomas is very much worth a flyer on his experience, route savvy, and measurables alone. He'd be particularly valuable to a team with an underwhelming receiving core and a young quarterback who could benefit from said experience. He could also aid in the New England Patriots, who will have arguably the league's most lackluster receiving core, even after using a second-round pick on Jalen Polk. The Patriots might start the season with journeyman Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, but at some point they're likely to turn the page to rookie and 3rd overall selection Drake Maye. So I think if we're evaluating who is still a free agent and who the Patriots could potentially trade for, if we're saying that they still need this game-changing wide receiver on the team, then Michael Thomas might be the only real option at this point. And because he's still a free agent, because we have not seen great production from him since the 2019 season, as this report says, because of injury after injury after injury, he's going to be probably worth virtually nothing in a contract. So the worst case scenario is they bring him in, they give him a 1-year contract, however much money that's worth, and it doesn't work out and they have to cut him and, deal with the loss, which won't be a lot. Or the best case scenario is he comes in, he's playing like he did 4 years ago, and they got him for virtually nothing. I think it's worth the risk. I think that even if he's just a summer body that you just want to see how he performs, how he meshes with the offense, how he works with Drake Maye and Jacoby Brissett, I'm like, I would say that that's worth it. I really would. Like, I think that he could work really well with Kendrick Bourne. The two of them could be the leaders of the receiving corps. And if he can get back to what we've seen before, then he is that sneaky good addition that the Patriots could use that would potentially instill fear in opposing defenses, which is something that they have been criticized for over the last few years because they don't have that type of receiver on the team right now. And defenses they come in and play New England and they're not scared of their offense. They're not worried about who they're following, who they're protecting. It's like they don't care. So adding somebody like Michael Thomas, I don't see the problem with that. I feel like, it's worth it in my opinion. The other options that they have are not enticing enough, I think, as much as Michael Thomas would be. And their trade options are very limited after these contract extensions that several receivers got, because that means that they're off the table. They're not going to be on the trade block anytime soon. And next year is going to be even less options, especially if T. Higgins is locked down or Brandon Ayuk is locked down. That means that the Patriots are stuck with who they have and having to try and find other people through free agency, which from what I can remember is not exciting next year either. So, clearly Michael Thomas is not being sought after. So maybe they could be the guy that brings him in instead. Moving on to, this was wild, guys. Matthew Judon. He is just utterly disrespected in PFF's new top edge defenders list in the NFL. They did the top 32 edge defenders going into the 2024 season. And for some reason, they put Matthew Judon to number 26. 26 out of 32. Now, they did something similar with Christian Gonzalez. They didn't even put Christian Gonzalez in the top 32, didn't even have him in the top 35, which I still think is ridiculous, even if it's because he only played in 3.5 games last year. Even if Judon only played in 3.5 games last year, I'm very confused why he would be all the way at number 26 when he's been as productive as he has. But they said Judon missed most of the 2023 season with a biceps injury, but still managed to record an overall grade above 70. However, his 61.4 pass rush grade was his lowest since 2017, as was his 8.5% pass rush win rate. He's a smart, reliable veteran, but the 31-year-old ceiling may be declining. I think that's a ridiculous thing to say, honestly. Like, we saw him in 3.5 games, and I don't know that you can come to that conclusion, but that is what PFF is saying. But I want to look at his numbers. Since 2021, he has played in 38 games for the Patriots. He's had 4 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, 32 sacks, 133 combined tackles, 33 tackles for a loss, 62 quarterback hits, 1 safety, and he's made 2 Pro Bowls. He's also now in the top 10 of Patriots history for the number of sacks with 32. He's at number 10. He can easily get to 5 or 6 this year if he plays an entire year and sticks to the pattern that he's had over the last 3 years. with how many sacks he's been getting. And if they signed him to an extension, he could easily move up to number 2 all time. Like, that tells you how good this man has been. And I get that they have to evaluate based on what they just did the year before, but I just still think it's wild because you knew that he was still going to put together a great season last year, even if it didn't end well because he was on injured reserve. We know what he's capable of in a Patriots uniform. So it's hard to imagine that there are 30 or 25 edge rushers in the league that are better than him, when just in 2022, he was going to potentially have the most sacks in the entire league. So I'm kind of like, I don't really understand the logic here, but it is what it is. He's a Patriot. You kind of used to it at this point, but let's just hope it was because of his injury and that was the main reason for it, because otherwise it's just a little bit silly. But they did include him in PFF. They did include him in who the top three players on the Patriots roster that are heading into the 2024 season. They listed Matthew Judon, Kyle Duggar, and Jabril Peppers, all of which are on the defense, which I think that's probably mostly correct. We know the offense is a little bit more problematic at this point. And they say in their piece that they considered Michael Onwenu, but that was about it for offensive players, and they didn't really feel like he was better than these three. So regarding these guys, they said Matthew Judon had a down year, but is still one of the top players on the team. Jabril Peppers earned the highest grade of any New England player with an 87.3, buoyed by a 90.7 run defense grade and an 83.2 coverage grade. Kyle Duggar also didn't have a great year, but we know that he is better than the 61.7 grade he recorded. Rookie cornerback Christian Gonzalez may have been in the mix if it not for injury. So I think that we can all agree that the defense is the better part of the team, and that is going to remain that way at least for the next year. I don't know what they're going to do in the draft and stuff next year. There's already rumblings of them taking an offensive tackle in the first round next year, because I think it's PFF that also has them as the projected number 2 overall pick, which I don't want to believe that they're going to do that bad. I have a feeling that they're going to be sneaky good, and I think the defense is going to be sneaky good, probably better than what people think. But taking a tackle next year would definitely be great, unless they plan on somehow finding a left tackle, or whoever they put there this year ends up being a lot better than anticipated. So we'll have to see, but I think they're pretty spot on with this. So that is all that I have for you guys today. I'm kind of surprised that we were able to go as long as we did. Expect another stream. I'm going to try to be doing it at least once a week. We'll see how it goes. It's always just dependent on how the news is flowing, if there's enough to talk about, because I definitely don't want to be doing streams that are not interesting or not entertaining, not worthy of really any topics to be discussed. So I will keep you guys updated. Make sure you're following Musket Fire on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Subscribe, like, comment, check out musketfire.com. Read all of our articles. We would very much appreciate it. Share it with your friends. Do all of the fun stuff. And I will see you guys next time. And remember, go Pats!